efforts that happen in high school education. And we are also looking forward to making further improvements in the university sector as well. Just a couple of things to highlight before we get into the main session. I'm happy to be a part of a transformative education journey for our students here at ALU, and even before I joined ALU. And it is important that education is skill-based, that education is experiential, that we learn by doing, and we don't only focus on majors, but we also focus on a mission-driven education. So in our midst today is the provost of the African Leadership University. His name is Dr. Nklankla Twala. I have the privilege of calling him MT for short. MT for short. He has a solid experience in education, and he is one of the believers and proponents of transformation in education. And I'm very happy that I've been working with him on the ALU campus. One interesting thing about Nklankla is that when you ask him a question, he will respond with a story. And I can't wait for him to share another story with us today. He's going to tell the story of ALU and why and what we are doing and why we are doing what we are doing. And I look forward to hearing some of his stories that he's going to share with you. And also perhaps one of the questions that is going to throw back to you. So I hand over to Nklankla at this point to tell us about education that is reimagined. Over to you, Nklankla.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you so much. Welcome to you all, wherever you may be. It's an afternoon here. Some parts of the world it's still the morning. Welcome to this discussion with us. We would like to share with you our thinking with on what is happening to education and how education can be reimagined. I hope that my picture does not mean that I have half of my face. I do have the other part of it. Maybe they wanted to hide the fact that I'm bald, but here you are, you can see all of me. So let's start the conversation about higher education and how it can be reimagined. We would like to juxtapose the question of education and its reimagination to the context of education. In other words, the context of the future of Africa and the work that is going to emerge out of this future. And then I would like to talk about that reimagination in the context of young people in terms of the education they need in order to be really, really successful and thrive in the coming exciting future. Now, if we can go to the next slide. One of the most important things about education is that education has always served various purposes. Higher education especially is a rite of passage. One of the critical things about higher education is that you leave home and you begin your adult life, okay? But along with that adult life comes with an important issue. You find yourself, you want to know who you are, and you establish your own identity in the world. But most importantly, you have to choose a career. Okay, there's a career that you have to have in order to live a meaningful life. Now, that presupposes that you have an idea what the future is going to look like. Okay, what we're going to try and explore here in this group, even before we go further in this, is what do you know what the future of work looks like? And if we can just play a game here where we're going to ask everyone to work with us by going to Slido and answering some questions about the future of work. Mimi, can you assist them in terms of the Slido challenge? So, yes, you can go to Slido and type in the code there, 1514.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Everyone go to slido.com and go to, you can write in number 151493, or you can, if you are joining with a laptop, you can literally join in. You can play this game with a phone and scan this QR code and then join in right away. Even we'll like the ones who are the panelists to try and play this game and see how it goes. So Philip, can you also help us drop the link in the chat box so that everyone can be able to access the link if that's easier for them. So we're going to give everyone like 30 seconds to join and then we'll start the quiz. Okay, have welcome noise maker, I like that. Can we, when we have 5 or 6, we'll join Shelly, thank you. NT, Dr. Yes, all right, perfect. Okay, let's start the game.
So, according to a McKinsey study, what social skills will be in more demand in the future? All right, let's see what happens. Okay.
Next question.
Next question. What is the median age of the population of Africa? Come on, let's go in. Okay. Whoa, 56%. Got 19.7. Wow, there is the winner. Okay, next. How many remote workers do we expect by the year 2035? All right. 56% said 300 million. Let's see what was the right. Wow, that's wrong.
The answer is 1 billion, yeah.
How much work is done by robots, machines, and algorithms already? Okay, let's see. What is the right answer?
29%.
29%. Wow. What percentage of high school graduates join university in Africa?
And the right answer is 8%.
That's so good. Okay. Thank you very much for that. The purpose of this short little exercise for us was for us just to test our knowledge of what we know, what the current situation looks like, and what the coming future will look like. As we have seen in this exercise, not many of us have the correct data points on where it is going. And it is precisely these data points that are so important in choosing a career going forward. Would like to now share with you some of the insights that we have found out, that we have established in terms of where the future is going, so that we can then begin to see how important it is that we think about the type of institutions our young people are going to go into as they prepare themselves for the future. Next slide. Now, if you look at this slide, one of the things that is really, is to look at what is the future that we're stepping into and what is the present that we're in and what is the trend line. If you look at the slide, you see that half of all work done today, 29% is already done by robots and done by machines. And this is going to go up going into the future. I normally joke with my son and I said to him, once upon a time, there was a group of people called typists. Their job was to type and draft documents. And he goes like, that was not very smart. But this is what it indicates how much change we have already experienced and where it is going. And 1 billion remote workers will be with us by 2035. The COVID situation has simply hastened that figure because we have seen that most of us are working remotely. I am hosting this webinar with you from Johannesburg, and one of my colleagues is in Mauritius. Another one is in Kigali. So we are all over the world. We're already working remotely, and this is only going to increase. And when you look at the types of skills that we need, the cognitive skill will increase by 26% into the future. In other words, what really makes us human is what we are going to need more of, as opposed to the things that can be done by computers. Okay. And the most interesting figure for me is that 65% of children entering primary school now will work in fields that do not exist yet. Okay, so that's the scale of the change that we're looking at. And for young people getting into university now, this is going to apply to them as well. In other words, there are fields of work that do not exist yet that they will have to grapple with as they go into their careers. Next slide. Now, but if you look at the future of where Africa is going, one of the interesting things is that Africa is really young. When you look at the median population right now, it's 19.7 years. That means that in the next 5 years, this group of people will be young adults who need careers. And in 10 years' time, they will be sitting there as parents, and they will have children of their own, and therefore, making sure that the population of Africa grows. And then when you look at Africa's population, it's sitting at 1.3 billion. This is a huge number. We are becoming a bigger part of the world. And when you look at the GDP of Africa, it's sitting at $2.6 trillion. And then if you look at the high school graduates in Africa, who continue to university, it's sitting at a small 8%. Now, it's important to understand why this figure is important, that if you look at developed countries, they are sitting at over 40%. The median in the world is the average is 40%. We are sitting at 8%. We need to increase that to much higher levels than we currently have. Okay, and then, yeah, I would like now to ask you just to view this presentation in terms of what is the future of education. And this comes from the OECD. Let's take a look at it.
As our societies evolve, so do our education systems. But what does the future of education look like? To answer this question and understand how traditional models are evolving, we looked at emerging features that may become the new normal in education systems around the world. What did we see? Traditionally, in education systems, decisions are made by a select group of people, and everyone has a distinct role. Students learn by listening to their teachers, teachers teach, and principals manage the schools. The curriculum is linear and standardized. Academic performance is prioritized, and students are assessed through standardized tests. How is this changing? Education systems embodying the new normal are part of a larger ecosystem where decision-making and responsibilities are shared among a wide group of stakeholders, and students are active participants in their own learning. In these schools, the learning process and student well-being are also valued in addition to academic performance. There is a recognition that students come from different backgrounds and learn in different ways. Learning happens in a non-linear process with different types of assessments used for different purposes. These schools are monitored no longer just to ensure accountability, but also to encourage frequent feedback at all levels to continually improve the education system. The future, by definition, is unpredictable, but by developing responsive education systems, we can help our children adapt to, thrive in, and even shape whatever the future holds. To find out how you can help too, visit our website.
So as we have seen from this short video, based on where the world is going and where Africa is going, we need to change our education systems. And we've just seen an example of a summary of some of the changes that are already taking place. Would like now to share with you how ALU is reimagining education here in Africa so that we can be a thriving continent. Next slide. Our mission is to identify and develop 3 million ethical and entrepreneurial leaders and to create opportunities for them to drive the Pan-African prosperity by 2035. This is what we are here for. And we've already started to make some progress in terms of that. Next slide. In terms of employment, we have already had 500 graduates across our Mauritius campus and our Rwanda campus. 85% of our graduates have been placed within 6 months of graduation. We've placed them either in work or they've gone for further studies. Okay, the graduate schools they've gone to are some of the most prestigious in the world. We have also had, some of them are listed there, London School of Business, so on and so on. But most importantly, we have also produced entrepreneurs, okay? In terms of entrepreneurship, we have 162 volunteers and founders of our students in our alumni. And we have also the capital raised by our alumni ventures since 2020 is $954,000. Okay, and we have placed students in dignified jobs created by students and our alumni at 10,500. Now, these are the data points that show that we're not just talking about this, we've already trialed this and it's already working, and now we're trying to scale it. Next slide. What are we talking about then? ALU, the ALU you are building is a university of the future. It's future focused, it's not focused on the past, okay? And it works very close with regulators. It's important that whatever university education we provide is properly accredited and is checked by the regulators, and we work with them, okay? But more than that, we also want to be a new age university that is not constantly dependent on gifts. We want to have operational excellence and make sure that our finances are balanced and are in order. Okay, the 4 pillars of the future university is one in which is socially a partner. It's partner to the society, and then has unique student experiences that are just personalized for them, which we'll talk about in the next slides, and that it aims at employability. You either are employed by someone or you employ yourself, but the most important thing is that you have to have the opportunity to make a living. But more than that, it's people who can look at their societies, identify problems, research those problems, and bring solutions to the fore in terms of how those problems have to be addressed. So it is really a practical education. Next slide. At ALU, we offer 2 qualifications, a BSc Honors in Entrepreneurial Leadership, in order to develop those ethical entrepreneurs. And we also have a degree in a BSc in Software Engineering. We believe that in Africa, we need technical skills, but we also have to marry them to entrepreneurship and leadership. And by so taking these two qualifications, you can combine them with any of the 7 grand challenges and the 7 opportunities that abound in Africa. So a student can do entrepreneurial leadership and combine it with a mission on agriculture, or can also do a BSc in honors in entrepreneurship and then focus on healthcare. This is up to the student to decide what mission they want to follow or what problem or challenge they want to address, but they can do our entrepreneurial undergraduate with that. But also, a student who is doing software engineering does not just have to be, a software engineer in isolation. They can marry their software engineering studies to any of these grand challenges. A BSc in software engineering focusing on climate change or healthcare is, again, something that all our students will be encouraged to do. Next slide. So we're going to play you a video here in terms of how we're structuring our education. With those 2 qualifications, we would like to bring to you the idea of having a mission first before you decide what you want to do, because that mission will normally lead what you are passionate about. Let's listen to the video and hear what Fred has to say about missions and not majors.
Final question for you. How many of you are doing today exactly what you studied in university? How many of you? Wow, 3 or 4 of you. So why are we forced to choose a major in college? When we go to college, you choose one, or if you're lucky, you get to do double major. The fact is that most of what you study today actually doesn't translate into what you do eventually in the world. Why? Because the world is changing so fast. So 4 or 5 years ago, if you took computer science, it was a world of the laptop and the PC. By the time you graduate, it's the world of mobile and tablets. It's irrelevant anymore. Or if you did marketing 6 or 7 years ago, it was a world of billboards and TV advertising. By the time you graduate, it's a world of digital. So we thought, what if you created an institution where instead of students choosing a major, you ask them to declare a mission for their life. And so say, your mission is to transform communities by bringing drinking water to them. Or I'm really passionate about solving the problem of traffic in different cities in Africa. And then you spend the next couple of years curating knowledge from different sources to really help you explore that passion. So declare a mission, not a major. Don't be forced to pick just one major.
Okay, so yeah, there you have it. Our idea then is to drive your learning. You first pick a mission, and that mission then will determine what it is that you study. And this is the idea of transforming education at ALU. Next slide. We're now going to look at how that transformation of the education can be personalized to the individual student. Okay, the individual student comes at ALU. What do they need to do? They have to have an individual goal. Okay, what do you want to study for? Now, they go through this journey of how do you study, why do you study, where do you study, when do you study, and what do you then study? You don't start with the what do you want, what to study, but what is your goal of learning? And we go through all of this. And in innovating the education here is why you study and where you study. You can study anywhere. You can study on campus, at home, in the workplace, anywhere. And when do you study? You study at your pace. Okay, there is paced education. There is an education where you can say, I need to pace my own education because it serves me. And we believe that that is a valid way of studying. What you study is a combination of us working with you to figure out whether what we are studying now is serving the goal or the mission that you started out with. So we want to work with each student for them to curate learning and personalize it so that the learning is meaningful to them, and not as opposed to just learning something because it's in the curriculum and then you have to figure out later what to do with it. Next slide. And we also, I mentioned the issue of research and practicality. That is, when the student has defined a problem, they then need to research that problem. That means reading up, that means interviewing people, that means exploring how that problem manifests in society. And then with our faculty, we validate the research or the findings of the students, and then we create knowledge out of that. After identifying what the problem is and validating it, we can then say, this is the nature of the problem we're looking at. And then because we're also interested in developing entrepreneurs, we will always be looking at how to commercialize what we know, okay? And so that the feedback between what we have commercialized and what the problem is always linked. So that's what we're promoting as reimagining education. It's not just to learn and know for knowing's sake, it's learning in order to apply and to be hands-on. Next slide. We phrase this as something that is in the, there's an umbrella of personalized learning, okay? That you should be able to look at a variety of education programs, learning how to do, learning how to be, learning how to, be useful in society. You look at options of, types of learning experiences that can support your learning and the academic support that we provide you. So our goal as an institution is to support the students as they learn across the spectrum, the variety of education programs they want to, and then the options of instructions that they will find useful, and then the learning experiences that we will curate with them, and then the academic support that we will provide for them. Next. All education starts with foundational skills. At ALU, the foundational skills that we focus on are how to think. This is a critical skill in the 21st century because it focuses on entrepreneurial thinking, critical thinking, and computational thinking. How to be, okay, leading yourself, working with others, and being responsible for change. And then number 3, how to do. Because there's no point of learning something and not being able to implement it. Quantitative reasoning is a skill that we focus on, managing complex tasks and communicating with impact. And lastly, you have to learn how to learn. To be a lifelong learner, you need to inquire, you have to be able to select and curate what you learn, and then you have to reflect on it. These are the foundational skills that all our students will exit with because we focus on them. Next. So how does it work? Our experience or our learning starts in one of our 2 campuses, one in Mauritius and one in Rwanda, okay? And that's where all our students have to start their learning. After they have spent a term in Mauritius, they can then go and learn anywhere in the world, and they can stay in Kigali or they can stay in Mauritius, but they can go to other parts of the world in order for them to continue with their learning. Let's hear from our students in terms of what they say about our learning. Next slide.
Is that my cue?
Yes.
Hello, good evening, afternoon, and morning, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Boniface Omina, also known as the local noisemaker here at the ALT campus in Mauritius. They didn't show the results of the poll that we did, but I'm pretty sure I was somewhere in the top 3. I saw a couple of people in the chat and where they're joining us from. Thank you so much for being here with us. And when I was asked to come and contribute to this webinar, one of the questions that I had in mind was, when they had mentioned that it's educators from across the continent and the world, I was very curious and tried to put myself in a position of a student who's being led by these educators in their respective facilities, and asked myself a question of, when I was back in high school, I studied in Lenana School in Nairobi, Kenya, which is where I'm from. If I was back in high school, what would I have wanted the leaders tailoring the education curriculums, the leaders in the institutions, what would I have wanted them to know and then come and pass on to me, right? And the biggest question that I had in mind was, and I'll just throw it to each of you, is how can you best prepare me being a student in your schools, in your institutions, for the next stage of my life, right? And that's, if it's high school or higher education before university or college, a question of how can you best prepare me for the next stage? So looking at my high school, I first learned about ALU in 2016, right, when this campus was being founded, when one of the students called Michael Moutier, when one of the students joining at the time, Michael Moutier, came to our high school to give a mentorship talk and pitched the vision of ALU the exact same way our humble provost here is pitching, and sold me completely to the vision. So I was in Form 2, that was in 2016, and I understood a very important thing about ALU, that it's not just the academics that will get you into ALU, and the focus is not just on the academics, but how can you practically apply your learning holistically in the education system to your life after high school, to your life in college and in university and higher education generally. And from then on, I chose to invest in my leadership skills, the mentorship that I was getting from my peer mentors as well as the adult mentors, as well as the entrepreneurial skills and solutions that I'm able to develop for the community around me. So started off with, I tried to start a charity organization, ran it for 3 years, it fell apart. Finished high school, started a tech company. We were trying to build the Tinder for internships, and actually did an incubator program at one of ALU's partner institutions called the Watson Institute. They run an accelerator program, a semester accelerator program in Boulder, Colorado. But then the most interesting thing was joining ALU in 2021, right, at a time of so much confusion and uncertainty. This was after COVID. You know, those who have heard a bit about the history of ALU at that specific period of time, they had to send their students back to their home countries because Mauritius was locking up, etc. So we were coming into a school with so much rich history and impact on the continent, but just as first-year students on campus, right, with the faculty and staff, Jerry and his team, being tasked with the challenge of building a new culture with these new students who have never experienced the ALU culture before. And that was the biggest challenge that I faced in ALU joining, but it also presented one of the largest opportunities, right? And this, such an opportunity, you know, with the narrative that ALU continuously insists of doing hard things, this is what I felt, and, you know, conversations with my peers was the challenge that we were tasked with in our first year of college, which was last year. So we got here in January, February, and then March, the whole country went on lockdown because of COVID. And then the whole campus also went on lockdown. So again, a new challenge arose that we were isolated together on campus, right? Over 200 students. This is coupled with not just what we have to navigate socially and culture-wise, but also the academic responsibilities that we had to shoulder. But as mentioned, with every challenge, there is, of course, an opportunity in there as well. And my friends and I came together and asked ourselves the question of how can we offer a direct solution to the pressure that's there to complete academics amongst the students. There's, you know, being isolated and quarantined together for, you know, a time when we weren't too sure how long it was going to last. And we just started doing parties on campus. Yes, parties. And a bit of background, I had history in the event industry back home in Kenya. And this was a chance for me to tie back my learnings and my skill into how can I be a solution to the people around me right now. So those parties eventually turned into an event and entertainment venture that I started on campus, right? And I'm going to give a specific example of how my academics aligned with my mission, which I'll state at the end of this. But there's a course that we do in our leadership core known as projects. And it was by far my most favorite course. I'm sorry, Jerry, it wasn't communication for impact. But it was my most favorite course. And the reason being, we got a chance to interact with real life companies and help them work on projects, right, that they had in the companies. So the first client that had a chance to work with was in the agricultural space. And the second client was also in agriculture, a company known as Jackfruit. So this would ideally begin with an intro call with the client as a class, where the project is pitched to the students, and then you're all divided into groups and you go and do your desk research, etc., and then presentations after about 2 weeks on the solution that you've come up with in a nutshell. Now, there's this quote, is it Elon Musk on, it may not be Elon Musk, correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, I think it was Bill Gates. I would rather hire a lazy person to do something because they'll find a quicker way to do it, something like that. I could be wrong, but I tend to feel like I'm a lazy person, right? So instead of doing the desk research of this company that we had been tasked with working with, I decided to send them a message on Instagram. Hello, Jackfruit. My name is Boniface Omina. We interacted on the intro call. I'm working on this marketing strategy it was a product expansion strategy for your company. And I'd love to learn more about your work. Would you be willing to meet up and talk more? So it's a Mauritian company, right? So you'd rather just go to the source and get information instead of being behind the screen and trying to guess what the company is all about. That's the reasoning that I had. So he reached out, he was like, hey, sure, I'd love to meet up. Can I come pick you up on campus? Oh, okay, like as long as it's no inconvenience to you. So James Delay, which is his name, he came to pick me up on campus. And as we were going to his indoor farm, which was the business that he was running, I started talking to him about my events and the parties that I do and I organize. Coincidentally, his cousin owns a club in Mauritius, right? And he immediately told me, my cousin has been looking to tap into a specific university niche market of international students. This is the exact market that I had built experience in doing parties due to the opportunity or challenge, right, that being locked down together on campus presented. So through that, I was able to secure my first venue event after campus. And at the moment, my events and entertainment company is running events both here in Mauritius, bringing together students from the different campuses on the island, as well as a team in Kenya that's also doing events there. When ALU speaks about majors, not missions, you almost think that you'll come here and you'll be spoon-fed all of these things, right, as a student. But you get here and you realize that ALU just throws you off that cliff, and you really, really need to make sure you build that plane or you crash. Not really crash. But my mission, I was able to discover my mission through all the challenges and the opportunities that came up last year. And I can firmly articulate that my mission, not just as an ALU student, but as a citizen of this African continent, is to connect Africa's rising talent in the creative industry with markets across the continent and across the world. My question that I'll throw back to each and every single one of the you educators in this meeting right now is, what role are you going to play in the learners that have been, that parents and society has tasked you with the responsibility of? What role are you going to play in their next stage in life? are they going to be able to articulate their missions and understand their role in their country, their communities, as well as the wider picture of Africa, and what opportunity is there for them to play in making the most impact on the African continent. That was just a brief story about myself. And I'm, of course, very, very open to questions and, picking up these conversations online or offline. I'm sure the team has a plan on how the engagement would go after this. But thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much, Boniface. We will talk about communicating for impact later on, and you tell me why it's not your favorite, even though that is what actually helped you to pitch your projects.
It did.
Yeah. Okay. And thanks for sharing your story as well. From lockdown parties into an entertainment venture. Congratulations, and thanks for also making us aware of the connections between the classroom, what you learned in the classroom, and how it's actually supported you in coming up with your own mission. This is to also emphasize the foundation skills that we have at ALU. I think Nklankla mentioned this already, right? We are not just learning, but we are learning how to think. We are learning how to be. We are learning how to do, and we are actually learning how to learn. And this is how our students are able to go out there and tackle the problems that exist in the world. Nklankla also mentioned something very profound when he was doing his presentation, and I'd like you all to think about it, right? If 65% of children entering primary school will work in fields that do not exist yet, then what are we doing about this, right? This is an impending problem, okay? What is the role that you're going to play? And what is the role that we at ALU are going to also play? This has been shared already. We've given you some highlights of this. And Boniface here is a testament of the impact that ALU education has on our students. We also have another alumni who actually is a staff of ALU, Philip. He's also a great testament of the ALU impact. So thank you all. For those who have joined from South Africa, from Ivory Coast, from Kenya, and from Nigeria, we are very grateful. We'll move now into the Q&A. We've seen some questions in the chat already, but feel free to also drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll do well to answer them. We can start by picking up a question from Cecilia, who's asking about admissions. Yeah, any response to the admissions process? Nklankla or Nimi?
I can answer that question. Hello everyone, my name is Nimisha Ilono. I am the Linked Engagement Manager here to tell you, but in few words, I just like to make sure that all the students come in and then we give them a good service until they enroll at ALU. So when it comes to admissions, we are having an admissions webinar next week on the 8th of April, and we're going to answer all the questions. But Cecilia, if you can specify a little bit more on what issues they are struggling with. We understand that some students face some technical issues or are having hard time to maybe submit the documents that are required for them to submit. So if you can a little bit more specify, that would be great. Or I can reach out to you via email to be able to see how we can assist your students to submit their application in a very easy and smooth way as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Nimi. There's also a question about HABs. Which university degree certificate will students have? Will it be ALU or the university connected to the hub? There's some confusion over there. I'll hand this over to Nklankla to respond.
Yeah, with regards to hubs will not be degree awarding. Hubs will be more or less like centers where students can go to meet each other, study with each other, interface with our visiting scholars and meet industry experts. Hubs are not by themselves accredited institutions, so all the qualifications will come from our core accreditation in Rwanda for the students who are registered with our Rwanda campus. But if you are registered with Mauritius, the qualification will still, as it does now, come from Glasgow Caledonian University, who is our partner in Mauritius. And the reason for that partnership is very clear. I want to dispel any suspicion why there. In Mauritius, you cannot start a university and you cannot confer qualifications on your own unless you have done a tutelage or a junior partner with an established university for a minimum of 10 years. Why 7 years of that relationship in Mauritius, and we will look to have self-accrediting powers after that period of apprenticeship has ended. So that's the answer in terms of where the qualifications will come from.
Thanks, Klankla. Margaret is also asking a question about students from closed up societies who may not be open to the new way of learning. How do we support such students? I can actually take this one. So the first term is very important, and we recognize the fact that students need to be warmed up into the new way of learning. And therefore, there's an on-campus experience where students are introduced to the foundation skills that we talked about. Okay, how to learn, how to be, how to do, how to think. And during that moment, students are able to work with their peers, learn, share their missions, begin to think about consolidating what their plans are and putting that into their missions. And so there's indeed an initial support for students to get to understand this new way of learning and consequently go back to their communities and make their impact. Let's see if there are other questions.
There's another question, Jerry. I can read
Right.
it. Teofil Havingaride is asking about, I'm a brother Teofil from head teacher of Gatagara, inclusive school in Rwanda. I'd like to know more information about ALU, your mission and your goal, and how can you help disabled students and their teachers? I think I can also answer this question. At ALU at the moment, we are, like Dr. Ntankla said, our mission is to educate and develop 3 million ethical and entrepreneurial leaders by 2035. And how we do it with our learning model, but also we make sure that we equip our students with the skills that are going to help them be the leaders even the moment, or even create businesses, ventures, even the moment that they leave ALU. So at the moment, we have MasterCard fully funded a scholarship as well for the student with disabilities. This scholarship is for inclusion with the low-income students, disability students, and displaced students. So we can also take this offline to see how we can assist your students outside, make sure that they are taking advantage of this current available opportunity of MasterCard Foundation Scholarship, and then help them apply for the available scholarship, because we have an intake for September and our application is open right now.
Thank you very much, Nimi. There's another question from Peter, and I see that Nklankla is typing an answer, so maybe he can actually speak to it.
Okay. The question has disappeared from my screen, so I'll have to ad-lib that.
Click on answered, you'll be able to see them. Yeah.
Okay, right. The question was around Leadership Core, whether Leadership Core still remains part of the program. The answer is yes, yes, yes. We couldn't remove Leadership Core from the program. In fact, what we have done is to deepen it. The Foundations program that I shared with you is really what Leadership Core was about and will continue to be about. We have just grouped it into these 4 themes that encapsulate it. And we want depth out of it so that students can really, really focus on it. So Leadership Core remains. We're not going to remove it. There was also a question about hubs, I think, what hubs are there and what are we planning. You might have seen in the media that we have a hub in San Francisco, but that's a special hub which we're using only for selected high-performing students to visit, so that it serves as an incentive for students to really look for something that they can go to. That hub is in San Francisco. We've already taken a group of students who are going to go there. Of course, we're going to have another hub in Kigali. We're looking at Kigali Heights to establish a second hub within Rwanda. And the reason for that is simple. 50% of our students currently in Rwanda, in Kigali, come from Rwanda. So if we're going to have a hub, we're going to have another one in Kigali. We are also looking at a hub in Nairobi. We announced one, it had a little bit of problems, but we're going to have a hub in Nairobi so that it's really an appropriate place for students to go to. We're in the planning stage for a hub in Accra, in Ghana. So that's still in the planning stage. I cannot say that we're going to have it tomorrow, but we're planning to have one. We're still doing our due diligence. One of the interesting things about Ghana is that it's a very lively city and so on, but accommodation is troublesome for students. So we're wanting to see if our students can afford to live within the city for that. We'll definitely have another hub in Mauritius, over and above the campus that we have there, because our campus in Mauritius is located in a remote environment, and we'll look for one closer to the city or the areas where students can reach easily. So that's the story about hubs, but we would like to keep you updated on developments on that score, because we would like to have more of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Nkankla. There's a question which I'd like to throw to Boniface to answer. And the question is, students are bent on pursuing majors and may not understand the mission concept. So how do we make them understand the connection? So over to you, Boniface, if Nkankla can also add on to it. Yeah.
Okay, so I hadn't earlier mentioned this. So I'm a second year business management student. So my mission, a way to build the connection is rather going back to the disconnect that's there between the education system and the job market, right? And the disconnect lies in the fact that incentive structures between educators and employers differ. And my team and I lead a podcast team where we speak to various thought leaders across the world. It's called Boardroom Banter. And we had an interesting conversation with a gentleman known as Roshan Paul, one of the founders of Amani Institute. And when we were tracking the disconnect, we realized that at some point in time in history, society began asking universities and education institutions to play the role of professional development for the students, right? And therein lies the disconnect even now, as we see that the job market is changing at a faster pace as opposed to the education system meeting that change. That's where ALU comes in. And our mission is basically looking at it from the lens of how applicable is your degree that you're doing in addressing a specific need that's in the job market. So one of the best ways to explain this to students is to, first of all, using case examples of graduate students who are already actualizing their mission, right? So for example, someone that comes to mind is Joseph Rutakangwa, founder of Razi, right? I'm sure the team can share his profile on that, but looking at what are ALU students already doing within these spaces where they align their mission to their majors. The other difference is my mission is seasonal, right? Missions are stated to be achieved, and once achieved, they change and develop and evolve, right? So this is my mission over the next 5 years, to connect Africa's rising talent and finding ways of aligning my curriculum lessons in school to what need they solve in the job market. Dr. Nkankla had mentioned the Silicon Valley Hub, and I'm one of the students who's been selected to take part in this program in July. And it's also aligned with what I'm currently doing as a second-year student in my internship period, right? What I'm currently doing both academically in school, mission-wise in terms of my entrepreneurial ventures, but as well as the relevance of both of these, not just in the African market, but globally in terms of impact. I don't know if I've explained that correctly.
Yeah, I think you have, Boniface, you have answered it correctly, and I'm happy that you answered it from the point of view of a student, because I realize that, you know, I'm not the right age group to speak adequately about this. But here is my 2 cents worth. When I went to college, I never found what I wanted to do. I only had to select what was available on the menu. And when I finished, I had to figure out what to do with what I had studied outside of university. So I started to be a teacher. I started that teaching program in second year because I realized that having a degree in history and English was going to leave me without a job. So I then decided to do teaching just as an, as a safety belt in order to get into an industry. What ALU is saying is that think about what you want to do first, and then identify what you want to study second. Now, if you are not aligned with the thinking, maybe you are not the right profile for ALU, because, you know, we have to make it clear that there are some people who will not be suitable for this model because they still want to go with the traditional model. But we are saying we're focused on the future, and we are taking a bet that the future wants people who want to curate their learning relative to what is needed in society and their missions. That's where we differ from all the others. Thank you.
Thanks, Nklankla. And I also just want to add that how do we make students understand this concept of mission? I think that is why we are here today, right? This is why we have gathered today as educators to discuss this and talk about this, right? So to even go a step further, we are building a relationship with you all, and we'll now need your support in sharing this mission-driven education concept with your students, right? And we'll be able to provide further information and clarity, explain, and sometimes even demonstrate how this would work, right? And thereafter, when there's a very clear understanding, we would need you to support us and come on board with us. Such that when your students are transitioning from high school, they have that kind of an understanding to transition into an education that aligns with their mission that perhaps they have already started building in high school. So this is basically the point, and we need your collaboration going forward. And we hope that from today we are going to build and continue that relationship and ensure that our students are able to attend the university of the future. So thank you very much for your time. I think there's a lot that we need to talk about, but we don't have enough time at the moment, and we'll be happy to receive more questions from you or invite us to have a chat with you. We'll be happy to do so. And thank you very much, Nklankla and Boniface for sharing, and to Nimi and Philip as well for supporting this event. Thank you, and see you another time.
Thank you.